music here, but dang. So, and that was actually the perfect song, obviously, always is, to talk about how the law, what we call the law of cause and effect, and is how it works, what it does. And basically, it's making use of the power of your thoughts. Has anyone here ever tried to stop thinking? Has anyone here met the people who never started? It's like, there have been days that was me, guys. It's like, oh, come on, you can do it. It's like trying to start one of my old cars. Please, 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 just one more time. There's like 5 different cars all pulled together in one car, and none of them want to work. Some days those are my brain cells. So when we engage with the power of our thought, what we need to remember is this is powerful stuff. You got to watch where you aim it. Ernest Holmes wrote in our textbook on page 138, the first principle fundamental to the understanding of the operation of thought is that we are surrounded by an infinite intelligence. You are surrounded and actually indwelt by an infinite intelligence. What the heck does that mean? Now, I usually think of that kind of like I've climbed up into an attic. And that's, as you come in, that's the stuff that, it's the Christmas stuff that you're going to pull down next year anyway, right? It's maybe behind that you're going to find some of your old furniture that you might use again. Behind that are the boxes of my first grade report card, that kind of stuff. But magically it goes further back, and now it's your parents' and grandparents' stuff. And it gets a little dustier and a little harder to see, but then you start realizing that it has stuff that you were not aware was back there. If you go far enough back, what you'll find is that it is everybody's stuff from the beginning of time. And everybody is walking into that same attic and pulling out the stuff they think is theirs. Maybe never realizing that they are holding on to stuff that happened in 2000 BCE. Not realizing that they are the effect of, that they're being affected by everybody else's stored thought, which we call memories. Some people call those the Akashic records. Some people call it the collective unconsciousness. There's lots of ways to think about this. Now, I was grateful that Nina Rochette has gifted me with the use of her Foundations project. I don't know if everybody can see that. It's a little far away for the people who are watching this recording, but trust me, I'll explain it. This is a tree. Well, actually, it's a plant. And it has some flowering stuff up at the top level. Those are divine ideas, but what happens is they get planted into the ground, into the soil, which is our consciousness. And that seed thought ends up growing some roots down there, and it happens invisibly. You will not see the plant until the very last step. We plant our seed thought, whether it's joy or power or peace, into kind of like a soil version of that great big attic. And it goes in there, and it sucks up the nutrients, and it grows itself, and it takes on power and strength, and then it becomes these flowers that we can see. That's basically how thought works. So you have a seed thought, say a seed thought of, name one of the qualities of God, guys. Name it. Joy. Okay, so you have a seed thought calling forth more joy in your life. And so you plant that thought using prayer. And you put it into your unthinking mind, and the very front of it. It's right up there with your Christmas stuff that you hopefully just put away. I'm working on it. I keep finding more. Does anybody else? So you put that idea of joy in there, and it sends out its roots, and it picks up on all the other stuff that's in your subconscious. including perhaps thoughts of, joy looks like, I don't know, it seems like a lot of people are getting puppies right now. Joy looks like this wonderful kid whose giggle I just adore. Joy looks like reconnecting with an old friend because maybe I got a Christmas card I wasn't expecting. And then behind that, along with it, comes the idea, joy is not something I can do every day, especially Monday morning. I have to be serious and I must adult now. Isn't that like the box that needs to be thrown out? Badly. Joy is for other people. So I'll plant the seed thought of joy and then go make it happen for other people, but somehow there's a belief in me that says I can't have it for myself. Anyone else? Yeah. I'm going to turn this way so that you can admit to it while I'm not looking. And you guys who are watching the recording, I'm talking to you. I've been trying to think of good ways to explain, new ways to explain this idea that we're surrounded by an infinite intelligence. And lucky for me, there was a question that was being asked, in conversation, and I thought, hey, Google. And somebody else said, Siri. We can ask the infinite intelligence anytime we want. And then there's Alexa, who I am told some people are a little concerned might be listening even when you're not speaking to her. And there's my metaphor. Your subconscious mind, that infinite intelligence, is listening whether you want it to or not. Not just when you're in your prayer chair and saying what you do want, but when you stand up for it and say, this is all this wonderful stuff and blah, 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 and so it is. Well, gee, I hope that works. Guess which one it's going to hear? The one with more juice attached to it, the one with more emotion and belief attached to it. We absolutely create our reality. And what I have noticed is that then we go as religious scientists, then we go beat ourselves up for the reality that has been created. I invite you to look at your reality here and now as kind of like a report card or the impression from yesterday's thoughts and the thoughts that go back to our ancestors and the belief and experience of our ancestors and all the way back to when one of us first crawled out of the ooze, metaphorically speaking. It's just what has been. Remember, that flower is the last thing to show up. The physical is the last thing to show up. And so when we're looking at what's in front of us as our life and we don't like it, there's this step most of us take where we stop and do the mea culpa, maxima culpa. I'm a horrible person, a religious scientist, because I'm not 6 feet tall and bulletproof. Come on now. Anyone else think we could skip that step and get a lot further? Okay, I'm getting some really tepid response. People out there in YouTube land, please say that you were just jumping up and down and saying, yeah, I'm done with the guilt. We're not going to play the blame game anymore. That is the seed I am planting here today. We're going to take responsibility for what is. Take it whether it looks like it's ours or not, so that we can use our power to change it. Yes? Yes. Okay. So that is how the power of thought works. We choose our thoughts. And what is ours to do is to hold the vision of what we want, to be really invested in that new seed thought such that nothing else is being brought into its creation. Those old belief systems are just chucked out the window. And that can be challenging, yes? I will tell you that I was reading Ernest Holmes' seminar lectures, and he was talking about early in his days as a practitioner, he would be working very hard, and nobody was paying him. Ernest Holmes had a prosperity problem. Can you believe that? The man who on one of his early boards had the developer that created Beverly Hills had a prosperity issue. And so he sat down and he did his work and he thought about, well, I want people to pay me for my work, but somehow he forgot to expect them to. The minute he was able to change that thinking, throw out that old box from his attic, undo whatever the bad stuff was in his mental soil, people started paying him right and left. I've heard of other ministers who expect to be tithed to personally as well as having their congregations tithed to the congregation as a whole. Now, that's not something that's part of my life, and that's fine. It has happened on occasion, but I don't expect that, and that's why it doesn't happen. I don't expect to wake up and be blonde. I could make that happen. I could choose to invest the energy into making that happen. But because it's not important to me and because I'm not investing energy into that particular seed, it's not happening. Now, sometimes it's because we're not focused enough on that thing that we say we want. Other times, it's because we have been trained not to ask for what we really want, to the point where we can't even afford to know what it is we really want, right? Have you ever just sat down and thought, well, what is it I'd like to have happen? I don't know. Where is it you want to go to dinner? I don't know. That defined my marriage for several years. That was our conversation. Oh, yeah, and I'm seeing other people nodding their head like, yeah, we do that too. If we won't say what we want for dinner, what makes us think we're going to say what we want the world to look like? We need to practice these things. Sometimes you run into somebody who has absolutely no baggage that they are claiming and don't seem to be at the effect of any baggage. So when they claim something, it simply happens. My first teacher was Jacob Glass, who taught in Southern California, mostly about A Course in Miracles. But he was also teaching Science of Mind, and he used to tell a story about how one of his students was so open to the idea of romantic relationship that he met his next partner at his previous partner's funeral. That is open and unobstructed, right? Had no belief saying, I have to prove that I loved this person by not being happy now. I can love and mourn completely and have a partner right now who will help me through the mourning process, I guess. I don't know. Reverend Leslie Goodwin, who has been helping us on social media, has been here this week. Now, just as an aside, Reverend Leslie has a sensitivity to an autoimmune issue. And so when I started getting sick, I'm like, I love you very much. Get out of my house. Why? Because I know that there is a deep investment within humans in germs, in believing that germs can be spread, right? And so while I am knowing that it's not the ultimate truth of me, I'm going to surf on the collective belief that says I can help my friend by staying away from her. So some of you have noticed that you were all virtually hugged today, as opposed to physically hugged. I'm still a little under the weather. So those of you who came here today specifically because we were having leadership council, sorry, I'm going to cancel that because I'm going to go take care of me. And that's exactly what I want to model to you guys. We still live in a physical world. And so as Reverend Leslie and I talked, we acknowledge that we live in physical bodies and we're going to take care of physical bodies and we're going to do things based on the facts as they are right now. Those little F's, you've heard me call those little F's. Those are yes, somebody just got it. I'm not swearing, I'm talking about facts. Those little F's get in our way, but we can also just kind of work with them and not stress out too much about them. We agreed to come here in physical form. God so loved physical form and the experiment being run here that it took on the form of us. And so we've agreed to play by certain rules. And one of them is that, it's a good idea. If we all really believed that we could just create the world that works for everyone like that, none of us would have insurance, right? How many of you people locked your doors on your car or your house when you left today? That is playing by the old world beliefs. If you did not lock anything, please don't admit it right now. You're being recorded. And there's an old belief. Reverend Leslie and I sat down and talked about our vision for the future and how we can take the newsletter and bring it online there will still be a printed out version of it for a while, probably another year or two. It won't be as fancy as the old one was, but online we will have a far more useful way of doing business in the world. An online newsletter that people will actually read, because the old version of it, where it was in a PDF and you had to download it, if we look at our numbers, there's maybe 10 people reading it. So there's that to think about. The world is changing. We need to pay attention to what we have created so we can live effectively in that world now. The other thing we did was start, and this is, obviously it's with the board approval and full knowledge. I'm not just going wild out here. Well, we are, but the whole board is doing it. So it's legal. We started putting together, using a web thingy called Vanco. So that when you are in here and you realize you forgot your checkbook, you can go to your texting app and text your tithe in. Or there'll be an app on your phone, it's right next to Solitaire. You can find it. You go to that and you can sign up for a class and pay for it then. And the money will go directly to the class, and we will have a note sent to us, saying this is the class that so-and-so signed up for. I've had some people concerned about signing up physically because, it's a piece of paper out there with your name, your phone number, and your email address. Some people are concerned about that. So now all you have to do is maybe remember to put your name and already signed up online. Or don't write anything. We'll know about it. Just show up for the first class. Or if there's a project we're doing, we're building a new crystal cathedral. I don't know. It's probably never going to happen because I'm not crazy about that idea. But if you want to give to the building fund, it will be right there. You don't have to do everything. Don't worry about it. We'll still have a collection during service. I was raised Catholic. When I grew up, we had 2. And I had a boyfriend who lost it when I brought him to a Catholic Mass because he thought, he was actually kind of believing the old joke about us Catholics that if we didn't get enough the first time around, we'd have a second collection. That's not what's going on, people. I just want to clear that up. And back to our point. You are surrounded by an infinite intelligence. It is going to create, we are going to manifest different ways of being in the world because this experiment with life is ongoing. There will come a day when we don't get colds. There will come a day when we are easily and effortlessly calling in that pet food that we forgot to buy. Oops. And that's kind of today, right? Alexa, send pet food. Send that, rebuy pet food. It shows up the next day. Have I had to go out and buy it? No. I just manifested it. In my house, if something starts working again and you were standing next to it, you claim it. I fixed it. Now it's, the pet food shows up magically, and I'm like, that's right, I'm wonderful. There was even a song. I think it was Mr. Wonderful, one of my uncles came up with. Anyway, that actually is part of this. Leslie and I set some goals to grow our youth and family ministry. And I want to remind you, most of this stuff happens invisibly. Most of what's going on happens invisibly. So at the end of the year, Reverend Leslie went into the invisible, which is all of that stuff that is behind Facebook and everything else, and gathered some numbers for us. We're doing pretty well online. There's some stuff we need to tweak. And how many of you have watched a kid minister video? Did you know you're part of a group of 70,000 people? Now, Seamus doesn't have any problem believing he's famous. Duh! There's even something out there now called the Seamus Shimmy, where Reverend Leslie was at a particular gathering and she showed this thing and everybody started doing the Seamus Shimmy to their opening song, which was very meditative until they were shimmying to it. Whatever, take it into your body however way you can. It's happening in the invisible that we and the co-directors of our youth and family ministry, who are Diane Gazelle and Dr. Aaron Smith, they have been calling in this thriving ministry this whole time. We are not necessarily seeing it in the format we're used to, which is a whole bunch of kids up here on the altar after service. Bless you. But it is happening. It is absolutely happening. And so this is where we get to get conscious and say, how else do we want that joy seed to show up as for the kids and as the kids? I'm going to ask you just this week, I'm going to ask you to take into your real prayer practice, calling in more children, more happy little bodies that deserve to be raised knowing that they are the spot that God has showed up. That they are the ones that are absolutely love-informed, that they are loved, that they are surrounded by an infinite intelligence that adores them. Just this week I'll ask you to do that, and I bet you money, Aaron's money, that, okay, see what I did there? There was a moment of, uh-oh, that's that little piece of false thought that's still being stored in my attic. Yes? We need to find a way to let go of that. And sometimes it's easier to have a Seamus just start doing the work for us. But that does not excuse us from our work. And so I invite you to remember that the infinite intelligence is speaking to you all the time. Because Ernest Holmes also said it's one thing to know a principle, another to apply it. It's one thing to know a principle, it's another thing to apply it. And he was very clear when he said one of the dangers of the metaphysical philosophy is that there's too much talking about it and not enough practice of it. So this week, I'm asking you to use this law that's all around you and plant a seed of joy and prosperity within the Children's Association of Awesomeness. Because if you're like me, you know kids that deserve to be raised with that much love. Yes? And it's easy to believe that there might be other kids that I don't know or that you don't know in this area that absolutely deserve to know how loved they are. So we can call those ones we don't know in as well. That infinite mind, whether you call it Alexa or Yahweh or Sai Baba, whatever you want to call it, put in your order, and allow it to show up. That showing up part is the very last part. But I promise you, if you will do the work in the invisible, the visible will be affected. One of the ways we do work in the invisible is through prayer. And so I come down here to remind us all that we are all powerful practitioners. Some of us have licenses as well. but we are all powerful practitioners of religious science. And if you plant your seed and tend to it carefully by continuing to call forth that which you have said you want, it must take form. And so go ahead and close your eyes if you want, because this is not the only place this prayer is happening. It's happening within each and every one of us. It's happening within the people who are watching this video right now. They may not be watching it for another 3 months. But in this moment, what I absolutely know is that the divine being, that thing we sometimes call God by all of its names, that divine being is fully present here. The invisible intelligence that is infinite exists right here, right now, all around and within each and every one of us. This intelligence is life energy itself. It is joy, it is peace, it is power, it is love, it is prosperity in all of its true forms. And resting in that truth, I absolutely know that God is all there is and we are part of it. And so any old ideas that have been getting in the way of experiencing it, I now release. Standing in the light of truth, all those shadows simply disappear. There's no work to it. It's simply what is and what naturally happens. And so standing in this truth, I call forth the experience of prosperity for many, many children as they arrive here every Sunday. For many, many adults as they arrive here every Sunday to learn their own power. I call forth the experience of joy and wonder and a changed for the better life in the people who are already here and the people who are making their way here. And this consciousness we share is expanding and growing and becoming more and more obvious in form. And for that, I give thanks to the Spirit that is doing it unto us, according to our belief. I bless it all and call it good, and so it is.